Okay. All right. Well, we've already done our introductions, so we can move on to appearances. We'll start with appearances and pretrial issues. And when you do that, if Mr. Abowd and Mr. Wright, if you can let us know what your preference is regarding the evaluators and the cameras as well. My preference would be to keep the cameras on for all of us during statements and keep them off during direct and cross, but I'll let you all decide what you prefer. Okay. Mr. Abowd, you're up, plaintiff.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning. My name is Charlie Abowd, representing the estate of Jessica Marks in today's proceedings. I'm joined today by my co-counsel, Ms. Ashley Wong.
Good morning, Your Honor.
Ms. Wong will be assisting me with the technical aspects of today's trial, including the screen sharing of exhibits.
Okay. And you pronounced it Abowd.
Abowd, Your Honor.
Abowd, correct. Got it. Mr. Wright.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning. My name is Connor Wright. On behalf of the defense, I'm joined today by my second chair, Ethan Wright.
Good morning, Your Honor.
All right. Any pretrial issues from either side?
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff has a few pretrial issues we'd like to address.
Go ahead.
First, the plaintiff would like to invoke Rule 603, calling for the constructive pre-swearing of all witnesses.
Granted.
Next, we'd like to direct the court's attention to pretrial order 11, which states that exhibits 1, 22, and 23 are pre-admitted and may be used by counsel at any time.
Okay.
And finally, Your Honor, when counsel displays exhibits that have not been yet entered into evidence, may we share them constructively outside the presence of the jury so that the witness may identify it?
So do the witnesses have the record in front of them?
That's my understanding, yes, Your Honor.
As long as the witnesses have the record in front of them and know what you're referring to, that's fine with me. Any objection, Mr. Wright?
No, Your Honor. Pursuant to Rule 9D, all witnesses have a virtual notebook of all exhibits.
Excellent.
So, Your Honor, just to clarify,
Do you have permission, Mr. Abowd?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. And with that, the plaintiff is ready to proceed.
Mr. Wright, any pretrial issues you'd like to discuss?
Yes, Your Honor. We'd like to invoke the Rule 615 to constructively sequester all witnesses save Sunny Mehta, our client today.
Mr. Abowd, what's your opinion on that?
No objections to the invocation of Rule 615.
All right. Without objection, then Rule 615 is in effect.
Yes, Your Honor. And with that, we're ready to proceed with opening statements.
All right. Mr. Abowd, floor is yours.
Yes, Your Honor.
Let me just get a clarification, Mr. Abowd, from somebody. You want my camera on or off?
Your Honor, everyone should go to speaker view for statements and then back to gallery view for direct and cross.
You want my video on or off?
You can turn it off, please.
Very good. Mr. Abowd, floor is yours.
May it please the court. Mr. Wright, members of the jury, when they should have stopped her, they served her. It's March 24th, 2019. Jessica Marks and her friend Morgan Levin are out for a night of celebration in Los Angeles. The two of them do something that a lot of underage college students do. They go to a local bar and they order some drinks. But when they arrive at Sunny's rooftop bar, you learn that the owner, Sunny Mehta, served Jessica drink after drink after drink, ignoring the signs to stop until she left Sunny so intoxicated. She got into her car and just moments later crashed into a ravine. That brings us to why we're here today. The plaintiff has sued the defendant, Sunny's rooftop bar, under the California Dram Shop Act for her wrongful death. And we carry the burden to establish by a preponderance of the evidence, or more likely than not, 3 key elements. First, that Jessica Marks was served when she was underage. Second, that she was served alcohol when she was displaying symptoms that would allow a reasonable person to conclude she was obviously intoxicated. And third, that those drinks were a substantial factor in her death. Now, that first element won't be in dispute today. The defendant agrees that she served Jessica Marks when she was just 19 years old. So that brings us to obvious intoxication. Today, the plaintiff will call Morgan Levin to the witness stand, Jessica's best friend who was with her that entire night. Morgan will explain that when Jessica got to that bar, the owner, Sonny, served her an entire bottle of wine, beer, 3 alcoholic seltzers, and a shot. And as Jessica was served each and every one of these drinks, she got drunker and drunker. Evidence will show that Jessica had red eyes, was slurring her speech, at one point fell down the stairs of the bar. But Sonny never stopped serving her. When she should have stopped her, she served her. And so when Jessica left the bar that night, she was so drunk that she got in her car and just 1,000 feet away from the bar crashed into a ravine. And that brings us to the final element, that the drinks she was served were a substantial factor in her death. Now, members of the jury, not only will you have heard from Morgan Levin today about the time and location of this accident, you're also going to get to see 2 very important documents that have already been admitted into evidence. The first is Jessica's autopsy, where you'll see that at the time of her death, she had a blood alcohol concentration of 0.16, twice the legal limit for an adult, 16 times the limit for a minor. Next, you'll get to see the crash accident report filled out by Officer Sammy Gaskins, where the officer concluded that the cause of this accident was driving under the influence of alcohol. Members of the jury, at the end of today's case, the evidence will be clear. Sonny's rooftop bar failed its responsibility to protect the safety of a 19-year-old girl. When they should have stopped her, they served her. That's why at the end of today's case, I'll come before you again and ask that you find Sonny's rooftop bar liable for Jessica's death. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Abowd. Mr. Wright, floor is yours whenever you're ready.
Yes, Your Honor. Sonny's rooftop bar only saw what Jessica wanted them to see. It's March 24th, 2019, just before midnight. Jessica Marks is standing in the parking lot to Sonny's rooftop bar. On one side, her rental car. And on the other, an Uber her friend has ordered to take them home. Her friend tells her to get into that Uber. But Jessica insists on driving. She tells her friend, "I've gotten pretty good at driving after a big night." She takes the keys out of her purse, and with them, she carries her life. Members of the jury, when a young person is taken from us, it's natural to want answers, to look for someone to blame. Today, the plaintiff alleges it's my client, Sonny's rooftop bar, that's responsible for Jessica Marks' death. And when they made that claim, they took on a pretty heavy burden. They have to prove to you that Sonny's bar both knew and saw that Jessica was obviously intoxicated, and then made the conscious decision to serve her more drinks. The plaintiff will fail to meet their burden because Sonny's bar only saw what Jessica wanted them to see. When Mr. Abowd was up here just a moment ago, he didn't tell you anything about that week of March 24th. We will. You'll learn that Sonny's was actually the 10th place Jessica had successfully used her fake ID. It was the 6th time that week she had driven from a bar past her legal limit. The plaintiff, they don't want you to know about that because that poses a problem for the plaintiff's case. Jessica Marks had gotten pretty good at driving and drinking, Jessica Marks had gotten pretty good at fooling bartenders throughout LA. Not only that, members of the jury, we're going to show you how Sonny's bar was staffed that night. You'll learn the only server that night was the owner, Sonny Meta. She'll take the stand and tell you how that bar has been laid out. Mr. Wright, can we get that exhibit? 2 levels, where Miss Meta had to take the orders from upstairs, get the drinks from downstairs, and then return back upstairs to deliver those drinks. And not just for Jessica Marks's table. You'll learn there were 10 to 12 people at any given point that night placing orders from the rooftop. Members of the jury, no one today is going to dispute how devastating Jessica Marks's death is. Her death was truly a tragedy. But when you took your oath as jurors, you took an oath to separate sympathy from liability. That's why at the end of this trial, we're going to ask you to find Sonny's rooftop bar not liable, because they only saw what Jessica wanted them to see. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wright. Plaintiff, what's your pleasure?
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the plaintiff calls Morgan Levin to the witness stand. May I proceed?
You may.
Please introduce yourself to the members of the jury.
Good morning. My name is Morgan Levin.
What do you do for a living, ma'am?
Well, I don't have a job. I'm a student at UCLA, studying biology, actually.
Did you know someone named Jessica Marks?
Yeah, I did. She was my best friend. I was with her the day she died on March 24th, 2019.
Ms. Levin, I'd like to talk to you about what happened that day. How did you come to be with Miss Marks on the 24th?
Jessica and I met at her Airbnb on that day, and we hung out for a little bit.
Where did you go after that?
We decided to go to Sonny's rooftop bar.
What time did you get to Sonny's rooftop bar?
It was around like 9 p.m.
Could you describe for the members of the jury what the layout of this bar was like?
Yeah, so Sonny's rooftop bar has 2 floors, and they have this awesome rooftop, which Jess and I really loved. We walked in on the first floor, went up the stairs, and sat on the rooftop.
How many employees were working at Sonny's that night?
Only 2. The owner, Sonny Meta, and another bartender, Frankfurt Johnson.
So, Ms. Levin, when you got to that bar and went up to the rooftop, did you order any drinks?
We did. We ordered a bottle of wine first.
Now, who served you those drinks throughout that night?
Sonny. Sonny took our orders, brought our drinks each time.
So, ma'am, you mentioned he started with a bottle of wine, is that right?
Yes, he served Jessica a bottle of wine, which she mostly had.
Your Honor, let the record reflect on placing an empty bottle of wine on the table for demonstrative purposes. Now, Ms. Levin, did Sonny serve Jessica any other drinks that night?
He did. She served her a beer.
Let the record reflect on placing a can of beer on the table. Did Sonny serve Jessica any other drinks?
Yeah, she served her 3 White Claws.
Let the record reflect on placing 3 White Claws on the table. Did Sonny serve any other drinks after that?
Yes, a shot.
Again, Your Honor, let the record reflect on placing a shot glass on the table. Ms. Levin, as Sonny served Jessica all of these drinks, could you describe her condition?
Yeah, Jess became drunker and drunker. She wasn't looking good.
Objection, Your Honor. Speculation. May I respond?
Go ahead, I'll hear you.
We're objecting to the part of the phrase, she got drunker and drunker. We have no objection to this witness testifying to symptoms she saw, how she was behaving, but to testify in front of the jury that she was getting drunker and drunker is inadmissible.
Mr.
Ma'am.
Abowd.
Yes, Your Honor. Miss Levin, as she just testified, was with Jessica Marks throughout the course of that night as these drinks were being served to her. Certainly, it is within her personal knowledge to testify to whether or not she looked drunk.
Mr. Wright, why is this speculation and why is this not the opinion that any lay witness can offer?
Yes, Your Honor. Like opposing counsel just said, he just said that this witness testified that Jessica appeared to get intoxicated, looked drunk. But what Morgan Levin just said was that Jessica got drunker and drunker definitively.
Well,
It's like a limiting instruction.
I hear the objection. I see no legal reason why this witness can't draw the conclusion that she appeared drunker and drunker to her. If you wish to cross on it, that you may, but I'm going to allow the witness to reach that lay opinion, and the jury can give its whatever weight it wishes.
Yes, Your Honor.
Objection overruled. Mr. Abowd, you may continue.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Levin, were you finished with your answer? You're describing how Jessica's condition appeared throughout the night as she was served these drinks?
Yes, like I was saying, Jess was getting drunker and drunker, and she wasn't looking good.
Can you remember any specific instances where Sonny saw her acting that way?
I do. Jess and I were going down the stairs to go back to the first level, and Jess, she fell down the stairs right into Sonny.
When Sonny saw Jessica fall down the stairs, did she say anything?
Yeah, she turned to the other bartender and said, "We should cut this one off."
So, ma'am, after Sonny said, we should cut this one off, did she stop Jessica from ordering more drinks?
No, she didn't.
Now, ma'am, could you describe how Jessica's condition progressed as Sonny continued to serve her more drinks after that point in time?
Jessica, she started to look worse. She began slurring her words. Her eyes were red and watery. She was confused. She wasn't making any sense.
Miss Levin, did you happen to take any videos of Miss Levin during this time? Or excuse me, of Jessica during this time?
I did, yes.
Your Honor, at this time, we're displaying Exhibit 10 on the screen constructively outside the view of the jury. Now, ma'am, do you recognize this thumbnail?
I do. This is the video that I took of Jessica at Sunny's bar.
Does it appear to be a fair and accurate depiction of that video?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, pursuant to stipulation, this is a video that was posted to Jessica Marks' Instagram account at 11:11 p.m. At this time, the plaintiff moves Exhibit 10 into evidence.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor, no objections.
Without objection, the exhibit's received.
Ms. Wong, let's go ahead and play that video.
Hi everyone, Morgan and I are in Hollywood. We're at a bar. It's kind of like a Philly bar, except everything is really, really expensive. $10 for a seltzer. And everyone here wants to be a model or an actress. I'd like to thank the Academy. Mom and Dad, you've inspired me. Okay, well, go big or go home.
Ms. Levin, was this the way Jessica normally acted?
No, this is not how I know Jess.
Did Sonny, do you remember Sonny being at your table after the time this video was recorded?
I mean, Sunny was bringing our drinks. She was clearing our table. Yeah, she cleared our table shortly after.
And do you remember Sonny saying anything that might have indicated that she saw how Jessica was acting during that time?
Yeah, I remember Sunny turning to me and saying about Jessica, "I hope this one's not driving."
Ms. Levin, after Sonny Mehta said, "I hope that this one's not driving," did she stop Jessica?
No, she didn't. She kept serving her.
What was the last drink that Miss Mehta served Jessica that night?
She brought her a shot, a green tea shot.
Ma'am, how long after that did Jessica leave the bar?
It was only like 10, 15 minutes later.
Were you with her when she walked out the door?
I was. I saw Jessica. We left at the same time.
How did Jessica get home?
She went to her car and she got in her car. I called an Uber for us. I begged her to take the Uber with me, but she didn't.
See her drive away?
I did. I saw her get into her car and drive out of the parking lot, and I saw her car just swerve off the road and fall into the ravine. And that was the last time I saw my best friend.
Thank you, Ms. Levin. Your Honor, at this time, I have no further questions.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. Levin.
Good morning.
Just want to say I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Ms. Levin, you know the plaintiff in this case is Jessica's mother, Ethel Marks, right?
That's right.
After Jessica's death, Mrs. Marks, she threatened to sue you. Isn't that true?
She did. That's what she said.
Instead of suing you, Mrs. Marks, she called you to testify against Sonny's rooftop bar, right?
Yeah, she didn't end up suing me.
Ms. Levin, I'm looking for a number. The week that Miss Marks was visiting you, how many different bars did you and Jessica get into with your fake IDs?
It was about...
Objection, improper character evidence under Rule 404. May I be heard, Your Honor?
Assume the jury is not here. Jury's been excused constructively outside the presence of the jury. Mr. Abowd, go ahead.
Your Honor, opposing counsel is using past instances of when Jessica Marks used fake IDs to develop a character trait of negligence and to suggest that she acted in accordance with that trait on March 24th of 2019.
What's the character trait, Mr. Abowd, that you're suggesting?
A character trait of negligence, and this is propensity that showed that she acted negligently in the past and that she acted in accordance with that trait on the day in question.
May I respond, Your Honor?
Sure, Mr. Wright, go ahead.
Your Honor, up until this point, there hasn't been a single specific instance of which we've offered character of Jessica Marks. There hasn't been a single instance on the record. I asked this witness how many bars they went to that week, and I can explain the relevance of that is twofold, Your Honor, if you would like.
Well, I guess, Mr. Abowd, I'm slightly troubled by the fact that Mr. Wright opened pretty heavily on this issue. You didn't object or move to strike it at the end of the opening, and now the jury's heard it. And I agree with Mr. Wright. I haven't heard any specificity regarding it, but hasn't the train left the station?
Your Honor, while I did not object to his statements that he previewed in opening, I would object to these statements being left on the record during the course of this examination, as I do believe it is objectionable under Rule 404 to talk about past instances of Jessica Marks using her ID at a bar and to suggest that she acted in accordance with that negligent trait on March 24th. There is no other relevance to that testimony of her using it in the past other than to serve as improper character evidence.
Mr. Wright, you indicated that there's two reasons you wanted to put forth to the court. Go ahead.
Yes, Your Honor. First of all, this line of questioning establishes that Jessica Marks went bar to bar with this witness. At no point were they refused service from 8 different bars that week. They got into different bars throughout LA. They drank past their legal limit. This justifies the fact that Jessica had gotten very good at appearing sober in front of bartenders throughout LA to get more drinks, and explains why she got away with drinking past her legal limit at Sonny's rooftop bar. That's
Tell
the
me, Mr. Wright, tell me why it's relevant that she tricked all of these people.
Your Honor, in today's case, the standard is whether or not a reasonable person in Miss Mehta's position would have been able to see that Jessica Marks was obviously intoxicated and then serve her drinks. But if Miss Mehta didn't see those symptoms because Jessica Marks never displayed those symptoms around the bartenders, well, that's relevant to show why Miss Mehta never saw Jessica acting obviously intoxicated.
May I respond to that, Your Honor?
All right, I'll let you respond to that, Mr. Abowd, and then I think I'm going to issue a ruling.
Yes, Your Honor. Showing instances of someone using a fake ID does not make it any more or less likely that they would be able to somehow hide the symptoms of obvious intoxication. That's an entirely different issue. Whether or not she used her fake ID at that night is not an issue in today's case under the California Dram Shop Act. The fact that she was 19 at that day is undisputed. So therefore, that has no relevance, and this can only serve as character evidence.
Well, let me ask you this, Mr. Abowd. Mr. Wright says that the legal standard in this case is whether the defendant knew or should have known that the deceased was intoxicated, correct?
Your Honor, there's a slight clarification. It's not whether he knew or should have known, but rather that these signs were displayed in front of him that would allow a reasonable person to conclude.
Right. Okay. So whether a reasonable person in his shoes or somebody similar, right? So
Yes.
How is it not relevant if this witness is basically a professional actress that can trick people into believing she's sober when she's not? How is that not relevant for his case? That his theory of the case is that the defendant only saw what Jessica wanted them to see.
Well, first of all, Your Honor, I would repeat that showing she used a fake ID doesn't make that any more or less likely. But secondly, you're in addition to that, Your Honor.
So let me ask you this. Hold on. Maybe we could reach a stipulation. What if Mr. Wright, you were allowed to elicit that the deceased went into multiple bars under the age of 21? Now the fake ID issue is not before the jury. Mr. Wright, do you have any objection to that?
No, Your Honor, we're asking that question to lay foundation in this line of questioning that they got into the bars, that they drank at the bars, and that Jessica drove from a lot of those bars.
Well, so I guess the question is, Mr. Wright, I thought you had me until Mr. Abowd's last point, which is, how is it relevant that she drove home from these bars? I'm with you that she tricks these other people into serving her booze, that she tricks them into feeding her booze over the course of many times. But how is it relevant that she then drives from these places?
Absolutely, Your Honor. The first point is exactly what we mentioned before, that she acted a certain way. But the second point is that we've raised an affirmative defense in this case, that if the plaintiff does actually meet their burden by proving by a preponderance of the evidence that Sonny's bar served her when she was intoxicated, we've raised an affirmative defense claiming negligence on Jessica Marks's behalf, that she went to the bar and drove home after drinking, and that was negligent.
But how is it relevant that she drove home from the other bars?
Yes, Your Honor, it establishes that Jessica Marks continued to drink and drive throughout that week.
Okay. I'm going to allow it. I'll give a limiting instruction, Mr. Abowd, to the jury that they're only supposed to use this evidence for that limited purpose, that is the affirmative defense, if Mr. Wright can ultimately prove it.
Yes,
Yes.
Your Honor.
A limiting instruction, in case you're not aware, means an instruction to the jury that they're only to consider it for this limited purpose.
Of
Yes.
course, Your Honor.
All right. The objection is overruled with that limited instruction. That limited instruction is given. Mr. Wright, you may continue. If you could re-ask the last question so the jury remembers what it was after that long back and forth.
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Levin, I was looking for a number. How many bars did you visit with Jessica that week?
I think it was around 8.
How many of those bars did Jessica drive from?
From what I remember, all of them.
You're aware that if you're acting intoxicated at a bar, you're likely to be asked to leave, right?
That's normally a bar's policy, yeah.
So if you're in front of a bartender, you don't want to come across as intoxicated. Isn't that true?
I'm sorry, could you repeat your question? I don't understand.
If you're in front of a bartender or a server, you don't want to come across as intoxicated, right?
I wouldn't know. It depends on the person.
Ms. Levin, I want to talk about your behavior that night. Before we do, Your Honor, at this time, my co-counsel is going to screen share portions of Exhibit 26 that we wish to admit onto the record, constructively outside the presence of the jury.
You may.
Mr. Wright? Now, pursuant to Stipulation 12, this exhibit is already deemed authentic, and the declarant is stipulated to be unavailable under the definition of 804A, unavailable witness. Those are the portions we wish to admit, Your Honor.
Your Honor, my apologies. That was a bit quick. I would ask that before opposing counsel's wishes to just move this into the record, that I can get a closer look at the specific statements.
Sure, Your Honor. Mr. Wright, can we get those back up?
Let's just start. Let's take them in turn. Mr. Wright, are you offering them into evidence at this time?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. Can we go to the first slide?
I don't have any objections to these 3 specific lines.
Okay. These lines are received. Next slide, please.
No objections to this portion.
This slide is received. Next slide, please.
Your Honor, I would object at this point to lack of foundation. And may I be heard to that effect?
Briefly, you may.
At this point, opposing counsel is wishing to elicit these lines from a person whose name they haven't laid the foundation for. And now they're trying to describe, these lines are saying something about she was in better shape than her friend. Her friend could barely walk in a straight line. They haven't laid the foundation for where this individual was that night, whether he saw her when she might have been around other people, and what his position was when he allegedly perceived these events. And in addition to that, yes, Your Honor, that would be my objection, is that they need to lay more foundation before eliciting these statements.
All right. The objection's overruled. Next slide.
Yes, Your Honor. That's the last slide for this witness.
Okay. Objection overruled. Those items / lines that you called out on the screen are received into evidence. Mr. Wright, you may continue.
Of course, Your Honor. Ms. Levin, I want to talk about how you were acting that night. Now, I'm going to read this onto the record. A question: were you concerned about Jessica getting behind the wheel? Answer: she was in better shape than her friend. Her friend could barely walk in a straight line to the Uber. A question: how was she walking? Answer: fine, I guess. I don't really remember. I just remember her friend was wobbling like she'd been in the ring with the boxer. No, Miss Levin, you don't believe you were drunk that night, right?
I don't believe I was full on drunk. Just maybe a little tipsy, having some fun with Jess.
So let's talk about your interactions with Miss Mehta. Each time Miss Mehta came to your table, you'd agree she was there for less than a minute, right?
I think it was around that time. She came like 9 times.
Right, and during these instances, she was taking orders from you and Jessica, right?
She was.
You never showed that video we saw on direct to any of the staff at the bar that night, did you?
No, we didn't.
You don't have any videos of Miss Marks and how she was acting while Miss Mehta was around. Isn't that true?
No, when Miss Mehta was around, we would order, not film videos.
You can't remember a specific instance where Miss Marks slurred her words in front of Miss Mehta, can you?
I can't tell you a specific instance. She was slurring her words the entire night. It was that bad.
But you don't have a specific instance where she slurred them in front of Sunny Matt. True?
No, because it was the entire night.
After you paid that bill, you and Jessica walked out that bar, right?
We did.
No one from the bar was with you when you walked outside. True?
No, they just let us leave as if Jess was fine, but she wasn't.
Let's talk about that. She didn't stumble into the parking lot, did she?
Not that I can remember. It was a weird night.
You don't remember her falling down when she was exiting through the doors of the bar?
No, she fell down the stairs earlier into Sunny, but no.
No. She was headed towards her car at the end. Isn't that true?
She was.
Thank you, Miss Levin. No further questions for this witness, Your Honor.
I thank you, Mr. Wright. Mr. Abowd, is redirect permitted in this competition?
Yes, Your Honor, it is, and we would like to redirect this witness.
You may.
Ms. Levin, at any point that night, did Jessica tell you she was trying to act sober in front of Sunny?
No, she never said anything about that. No, Jessa would never do that.
Were there specific instances that night where Sunny saw Jessica acting drunk that night?
Yeah, I mean, when Jess fell right into him down the stairs, Sunny saw that and said we should cut this one off, but never did.
Thank you, Ms. Levin. Your Honor, no further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Abowd. Is recross permitted in this competition, Mr. Wright?
Yes, Your Honor. No recross.
Very well, thank you. The witness is excused. Thank you, Ms. Witness. Mr. Abowd, what's your pleasure?
At this time, the plaintiff rests our case in chief.
Are there mid-trial motions in this competition?
I don't
Your
believe so, Your Honor, but we don't have any.
Excellent. Would both sides like a short recess, or would you like to continue?
Your Honor, the plaintiff is ready to continue. However, if the defense would like a brief intermission, we would be fine with that as well.
We're okay to continue, Your Honor.
Okay, let's continue. Mr. Wright, what's your pleasure?
Your Honor, this time we call Sunny Mehta to the stand.
Okay.
Good morning, Ms. Mehta.
You may inquire. I apologize, Mr. Wright.
Yes, Your Honor. Good morning, Ms. Mehta. It appears you're muted.
Sorry about that. Good morning.
I want to get right in. Where were you on March 24th, 2019?
On March 24th, I was at the bar I owned, Sunny's Rooftop.
Now, at that bar, do you recall seeing someone named Jessica Marks that night?
Yes, on March 24th, Jessica came in with her friend Morgan Levin. I didn't know either of their names at the time, but now I know.
I want to talk about the layout of that bar. Do you have exhibits 8 and 9 in your virtual exhibit notebook?
Yes, I do.
And they appear fair and accurate?
Yes, they're pictures of my bar. I've sold it now, but these are accurate pictures of what it looked like at the time.
Your Honor, at this time, the defense moves exhibits 8 and 9 into evidence.
Without objection, Your Honor, we agree that these are pictures of Sunny's Rooftop Bar.
Without objection, the exhibits are received.
Mr. Wright, can we get those on the screen? And while he's doing that, Ms. Mehta, when they arrived, did Miss Marks appear intoxicated?
No, when Miss Marks first came into my bar that night, she seemed perfectly sober by the way she was acting.
Could you please tell the jury what signs you would look for to gauge whether someone is intoxicated?
Yes, to be a bartender in the state of California, you have to be certified by the restaurant food service, and you have to know the signs to look for when serving. Watery eyes, red eyes, a vacant glaze, passing out, the list goes on.
Can you take a look at exhibits 8 and 9 and describe the layout of the bar?
Yes, so On Exhibit 8, the one on the right of the screen, you see that this is the rooftop and there are stools, chairs, and then you go down the stairs, which you don't see, and then you get to the second exhibit on the left, and that's where the actual bar is, as well as more seating.
Ms. Mehta, what would you do if someone appeared intoxicated at that bar?
I would cut them off.
Your Honor, at this time, we're going to screen share outside the presence of the jury, Exhibit 26, for one more of those statements we wish to read onto the record. Mr. Wright?
Let's just slow him down, Mr. Wright, so Mr.
course.
Abowd has an opportunity to review them as we go. Mr. Abowd, as they come up, if you have any objection, let us know. All right, we'll take them in turn. Any objection, Mr. Abowd?
No objection, Your Honor.
And that's all, Your Honor.
All right, without objection, that slide's received. Thank you, Mr. Wright.
I want to read that statement. Question: if you thought Jessica was unfit to drive, would you have said something, either to her or a bar employee? Maybe, yeah, I probably would have. Now, Ms. Mehta, I want to talk about your interactions with Jessica Marks that night. Did you serve her table?
I did. I served her and Morgan that night.
How many times would you say you interacted with her that night?
Throughout the whole night, they were there probably about, I want to say 8 to 10 times.
About how much time would you spend at their table during these interactions?
As short as 30 seconds, as long as a minute.
During those interactions, did Miss Marks appear intoxicated?
No, Miss Marks never showed any of the signs I mentioned earlier that I looked for to show that someone might be obviously intoxicated.
Were you present earlier in trial when Miss Levin testified?
Yes, my camera was off, but I was listening.
And did you hear Miss Levin describe an event where Miss Marks stumbled down some stairs into?
Yes, which was really interesting to hear because on March 24th, 2019, that didn't happen.
I want to talk about where you were that night. Were you on the rooftop the entire night?
No, I was the only server that night. So I was on the rooftop. I was down below. I was helping the bartender make drinks. I was everywhere.
And was Miss Marks's table the only table you were serving that night?
No, I had anywhere between 12 and 14 tables that night.
Did you have another server helping you serve those tables?
And no, I had another bartender, Frankfurt. He would help make drinks, but I would be the only one serving it to the patrons.
Did you also hear Miss Levin say or describe an event where you looked at her and you pointed at Miss Marks and said, "I hope this one's not driving"?
Once again, that was really interesting to hear because it didn't happen.
Can you explain what actually happened?
Yes, Jessica's friend Morgan Levin, they weren't displaying signs of obvious intoxication, but were displaying signs that the alcohol had started to affect her. That's when I pointed to Miss Marks and pointed then to Miss Levin and asked it to make sure that Miss Levin was not driving home.
Ms. Mehta, at any time did Miss Marks appear intoxicated throughout the entire night?
No.
Do you ever have to cut people off at your bar?
Yes, I not only cut them off, but take their keys, call an Uber or a cab. It differs on different situations.
And did you watch Jessica and her friend Morgan leave the bar that night?
I did.
Did you watch them come down the stairs?
Yes, actually, these stairs are what I take as a sobriety test. I watch a lot of my customers walk down. If they stumble or it's really hard for them to walk down the stairs, I know I maybe need to call a cab, an Uber, or take their keys.
And so when Miss Marks walked down those stairs, how did she appear when she was walking?
Perfectly sober. She did not struggle when walking down the stairs.
Did she say anything?
Yes, actually, she said goodnight to the bartender, Frankfurt.
Did she slur her words as she said that?
No, that was another sign that she did not display for intoxication.
Samantha, did you ever give her a drink when she needed to be cut off?
No, as tragic as it is that Jessica died that night, she never displayed any signs that I needed to cut her off. So I didn't.
Thank you, Ms. Mehta. And no further questions.
Cross-examination, Your Honor.
Whenever you're ready, Mr. Abowd.
Good morning, Ms. Mehta. Before I begin, are you able to see and hear me clearly?
I am, and good morning.
Now, in his opening statement, Mr. Wright said that you only saw what Jessica wanted you to see. So I want to start off by talking about what you saw on March 24th. You saw Jessica Marks and Morgan Levin 8 to 10 times throughout that night when you were serving, didn't you?
On March 24th, I saw both Jessica and Morgan about 8 to 10 times, yes.
And throughout those 8 to 10 times, you saw that Jessica isn't exactly a big person, is she?
What are you referring to? Are you referring to her weight, counselor?
Ma'am, she's about 5 foot tall, isn't she?
Yes, Jessica was about 5 foot tall.
You saw that she only looked just over 100 pounds.
115, 120, anywhere between there.
And ma'am, you saw all of the drinks that you brought to Jessica's table that night, didn't you?
Well, I'd just like to confirm that it wasn't just Jessica, but Jessica and Morgan.
So that's a yes, ma'am. You saw the drinks that, you saw the drinks that you were bringing to her table throughout the course of that night, didn't you?
Yes, I served them drinks that night.
You brought them a bottle of wine, didn't you?
Yes.
You saw yourself giving them 3 cans of alcoholic White Claws, right?
Yes, I believe I remember serving them 3 White Claws.
You served them 2 beers.
Yes, 2 beers, if I remember from that receipt correctly.
And at the end of the night, you saw Jessica drink a shot, right?
Her and Morgan took a green tea shot, yes.
Ma'am, at this time, I'm going to display on the screen Exhibit 22. And Your Honor, let the record reflect that pursuant to stipulation, this has been pre-admitted. Now, ma'am, you were shown this document when you were deposed before trial, weren't you?
I was shown this exhibit in my deposition, yes.
Now, on this document, you saw that at the time of her death, Jessica had a blood alcohol content of 0.16, didn't you?
Yes, I did learn about Jessica's BAC.
That's twice the legal limit for an adult.
That is, if someone is driving, yes.
That's 16 times the legal limit for a minor. Is that not right?
You're correct.
So, ma'am, you said this on direct, and I actually wrote it down. You said that Jessica never displayed signs that would cause you to cut her off. Is that right?
Yes, I never saw Jessica display signs that I would need to cut her off.
So after serving her all those drinks, you never saw that 5 foot tall, 100-pound girl showing any red eyes?
I want to stop you right there. I didn't serve Jessica all those drinks. I served 2 people those drinks.
Ma'am, after bringing all of those drinks to the table where you knew she was sitting, you didn't see her ever slur her speech?
I didn't see Jessica slur her speech I didn't hear Jessica slur her speech that night.
You never saw her say something that didn't make sense?
No.
At this time, I'm going to display Exhibit 10. This has been pre-admitted into evidence, or excuse me, this has been already admitted. Now, this is Jessica, right?
That looks like Jessica Marks.
That's your bar that she's sitting at.
Yes.
Those are the drinks that you served to her table?
Looks like it, yes.
Ms. Wong, let's play that video.
Hi everyone, Morgan and I are in Hollywood. We're at a bar. It's kind of like a Philly bar, except everything is really, really expensive. $10 for a seltzer. And everyone here wants to be a model or an actress. I'd like to thank the Academy. Mom and Dad, you've inspired me. Okay, well, go big or go home.
Ms. Mehta, you've been trained on how to recognize the signs of intoxication, haven't you?
Yes.
When you saw this video, you said it's possible she could have been drunk.
Yes, it's possible. As you see, there are drinks on the table. But
When you saw, oh, excuse me, ma'am, you can finish your answer.
thank you. It's possible, but again, not definitive.
Ma'am, when you saw this video, you said that you would be concerned.
It's possible I could have been concerned if I ever saw Jessica like that night.
Ma'am, that's not what you didn't say. It was possible you would have been concerned. You said if you saw her in this video, you would have been concerned. Isn't that right?
Yes.
But after this point in time, after 11:11 that night, you didn't stop serving, did you?
No, I never saw Jessica act like that. From my
Oh, ma'am, I wasn't asking you if you claim to have seen her acting like that. My question was, after that point in time, you didn't stop serving her, did you?
No.
Right before she left, you brought a round of shots to her table, didn't you?
They ordered a round of shots, yes.
And you saw her drink that shot.
Yes.
That's a shot that contains whiskey.
Yes.
It's a shot that contains peach schnapps.
Yes.
And after serving her that shot with 2 types of liquor, Jessica left your bar.
Jessica walked down the stairs without stumbling, walked out of the bar, yes.
Ma'am, you know where her car crashed that night, don't you?
Yes, off the ravine.
You know that she crashed just 1,000 feet away from your bar that night.
I now know that, yes.
Thank you, Ms. Mehta. No further questions at this time.
Any redirect,
Yes, Your Honor.
whenever you're ready.
Miss Mehta, did you ever see Jessica Marks acting the way she did in that video?
No, from what I can see from the video, it could have just been her and her friend having fun.
Did you ever see that video?
No.
Thank you, Miss Mehta. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Any recross?
No recross, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. The witness may step down.
With that, Your Honor, we rest our case.
Defense having rested their case, are both sides prepared for summations?
Yes, Your Honor, the plaintiff is ready to proceed.
Defense as well, Your Honor.
Do we go by federal rules here? Plaintiff, defense, federal, plaintiff, defense, plaintiff?
Yes, Your Honor, and we would ask again that we reserve any remaining time for rebuttal.
Of course. Whenever you're ready.
Yes, Your Honor. May it please the court, opposing counsel, members of the jury. When they should have stopped her, they served her. Members of the jury, when you think about how Jessica's car ended up in that ravine, it might not seem all that crazy. Drunk driving accidents, unfortunately, happen all the time. But when you take a step back, when you look at how she ended up getting behind the wheel in the first place, it becomes clear. You see a bar that failed to protect the safety of a 19-year-old girl. With every glass of wine, with every beer, with every shot that Sonny served, when they should have stopped her, they served her. And that's why we're here today. The plaintiff has brought this wrongful death action against the defendant, Sonny's Rooftop Bar, under the California Dram Shop Act. Now, we carried the burden of a preponderance of the evidence, or more likely than not, to prove three things. First, that the defendant served Jessica when she was underage. Second, that he served her when she was displaying signs that would allow a reasonable person to conclude she was obviously intoxicated. And third, that those drinks were a substantial factor in her death. Now, that first element is undisputed. The defendant agrees that she served a 19-year-old girl that night. So that brings us to obvious intoxication. Now, today, the plaintiff called Morgan Levin to the stand, Jessica's best friend who was with her throughout the course of that evening. And what Ms. Levin explained to you today is the sheer volume of drinks the defendant served to Jessica that night. You heard today that the defendant served Jessica an entire bottle of wine. You heard today that he served her a can of beer. You learned today that she served not one, not two, but 3 cans of alcoholic seltzer. And at the end of the night, right before Jessica got on the road, she served her a double shot containing whiskey and peach schnapps. Morgan Levin explained to you that as the night progressed, after a 5-foot-tall, 100-pound girl consumed these drinks, Jessica got drunk. She slurred her words. She wasn't making sense. She was loud. She was stumbling. You heard today just how obvious those signs were. You learned today that not only were those signs obvious, but that the defendant saw those signs. Ms. Levin described that as Jessica was going down the stairs of the bar at 10 o'clock that night, she stumbled. She fell right down those stairs, and who did she land into? The defendant. Sonny was right there. And she said, when that happened, she turned to the other bartender. She said, "We might have to cut this one off." Members of the jury, what could be a more obvious indication from the bartender herself that someone is obviously drunk? But she didn't cut her off. When Sonny should have stopped her, she served her again. More and more drinks. And as Ms. Levin explained, Jessica's condition only got worse until you saw the video that she recorded that night, Exhibit 10. Let's play that video one last time.
Hi everyone, Morgan and I are in Hollywood. We're at a bar. It's kind of like a Philly bar, except everything is really, really expensive. $10 for a seltzer. And everyone here wants to be a model or an actress. I'd like to thank the Academy. Mom and Dad, you've inspired me. Okay, well, go big or go home.
Members of the jury, you don't need to be an expert. You don't need to be someone trained like Sonny Mehta to understand just how obvious this person is drunk. But after this video, and members of the jury, Sonny said it too. After this video was filmed, you heard today that she said, "I hope that this one's not driving home." But she didn't stop her. When she should have stopped her, she served her again, bringing another shot to her table just as Jessica walked out the doors of that bar. And you learned today that just 1,000 feet away from that bar, Jessica Marks crashed her car into a ravine. Members of the jury, the plaintiff has carried our burden of proof to establish that Sonny's rooftop bar had a responsibility to protect the safety of a 19-year-old girl, had the responsibility to not serve an underage person, but they failed that responsibility at every step of the way. And as a result of their failures, an innocent 19-year-old girl is dead. When they should have stopped her, they served her. Find Sonny's rooftop bar liable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abowd. Mr. Wright, whenever you're ready, you may proceed. Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor. Sonny's bar only saw what Jessica wanted them to see. Jessica, she's standing at the top of the steps to Sonny's rooftop bar. As Miss Marks descends the stairs, she's not stumbling. She walks down the stairs and says something to the bartender. She says, "Good night, Frankfurt." She's not slurring her words. Members of the jury, that is how Miss Marks acted and behaved when she was with Sonny's staff. That's undisputed evidence. That's something the plaintiff's witness told you. She didn't stumble out of that bar. She didn't stumble into the parking lot. That's a problem for the plaintiff. Today you learned why. See, I asked Morgan Levin on the stand to tell you how many times that bar, or how many bars they went that week with Jessica Marks. Now, what did she tell me? She said she thinks they went to 8 bars. Then I asked her, from those bars, how many of those bars did Jessica Marks drive from? And she told you all of them. And we'll get to why that's a problem in a minute, because that contradicts her statement. But before we do, let's talk about what that means. I see it all started days before Jessica Marks ever went to Sonny's rooftop bar. Jessica Marks, she visits her friend Morgan and brings them fake IDs. Now, for 6 days, Jessica goes bar to bar throughout LA, using those IDs, visiting 8 different bars, driving under the influence from 6 of them. That's how Jessica got so familiar with staying in bars past her legal limit. That's how Jessica was able to show the bartenders what she wanted them to see. Now, the plaintiff, they had to prove that Sonny knew and saw that Jessica was intoxicated, and then made the conscious decision to serve her drinks. Members of the jury, Jessica never displayed a single sign of intoxication to anyone at the bar that night. Today, you learned the only person that displayed signs of intoxication was the plaintiff's witness, a witness who can't be trusted. The reason she can't be trusted, well, it isn't just because she was Jessica Marks' best friend. It isn't just because the same attorneys that directed her were going to sue her. It isn't just because she's contradicted by everyone at the bar that night. It isn't just because she was the only eyewitness the plaintiff could find. It's because she was drunk that night. It's because multiple witnesses told you she was the one who slurred her words, had bloodshot eyes, had a lack of balance. She could hardly walk to her Uber that night. And that is the plaintiff's only witness. So what evidence did they actually bring? Because right now, all you have is a video. So let's take that. Let's take the video. The plaintiff, they didn't say a word about where that video went. They just told you when it happened. It's because they don't want you to know. That video was for Instagram. That video was for social media. Jessica was in front of a camera. Of course, she's going to act as drunk as she can. Of course, she's going to act intoxicated for social media. I even asked Miss Meta. She told you, I didn't see that. They didn't show me that video. It just looks like the two of them are having fun while I'm not there. Mr. Wright, can we get that rooftop bar on the screen? Exhibits 8 and 9. Today you learned that Sonny's rooftop bar, it has 2 levels. Miss Marks was upstairs, while the bar itself was downstairs. Sonny Meta spent the entire night running up and down those stairs, taking orders, delivering drinks. She spent seconds at each table. She never once saw those signs of intoxication. Neither did anyone else. In the week Jessica went to bar, drinking past her legal limit and driving, no one tried to take her keys. No one tried to call her a cab. No one saw those signs of intoxication. No one, including Stevie Redders, just a guy at the bar that night. The only eyewitness who had nothing to lose, an eyewitness that we showed you was deposed by both parties and told you that Morgan Levin was the person that appeared intoxicated. It's the only eyewitness that didn't have a lawsuit. No reason to want to make something up before you today. We learned that he watched Jessica's table that whole night, and Jessica appeared perfectly okay to drive. It's because everyone in the bar only saw what Jessica wanted them to see. Members of the jury, the death of Jessica Marks is a tragedy. We all want someone to blame. Sometimes we're presented with cases like this one, where the person we look to for answers is no longer with us. But one thing's for sure. After 10 interactions, at no point did Sonny's bar see those signs. At no point did anyone alarm a bartender. And at no point that night did Sonny see Jessica Marks acting clearly drunk. Sonny's bar only saw what Jessica wanted them to see. That's why we ask, you find Sonny's bar not liable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wright.
Rebuttal, Your Honor.
When you're ready, Mr. Abowd.
May it please the court. They only saw what Jessica wanted them to see. Members of the jury, think about what that means. Mr. Wright wants you to believe that a girl with a blood alcohol concentration of 0.16, twice the legal limit, was able to hide all signs of being drunk every one of the 8 to 10 times that Sonny was at her table. Does that make sense? Their story doesn't have to. Because we know today that Sonny Mehta saw the number of drinks that she served to Jessica that night. She saw that Jessica was a 5-foot tall, 100-pound girl. And she saw the signs of intoxication. She saw Jessica fall down the stairs of the bar. And how do we know that? Because Sonny said, we might need to cut this one off. She saw the signs, but she chose to ignore them when she should have stopped her. She served her. And as a result of those failures, Jessica Marks is dead. Find the defendant Sonny's rooftop bar liable. Thank you.
Okay. We keep the recordings on for comments, Mr. or Miss Bailiff, whoever that may be.
No, sir. I'm going to turn it off right now.
Okay.